related to browser packages, including packages from LibreWolf, Firefox, and Zen browser, all by a user that's currently known as Danik Pappas. The malware on each package build pulled scripts in from a GitHub repo and would run them during the build install process of the package. The code carried something called Chaos, Remote Access Trojan, or RAT for short. So Chaos RAT, quite the name there. But the scary part is that this Trojan is capable of reverse shells, executing commands, and even harvesting data, which are all scary things that seemingly could get installed on your computer, all by simply trusting a user from the AUR. Now, while the AUR remains very safe, as most people don't have the intentions of hacking you, and the packages are actually monitored quite well, this is not the first time that this has occurred, where malware has showed up in the AUR. For those of you wondering what the AUR is, we're going to get back to exactly what packages were affected. Just know if you downloaded one of these 3 packages from the AUR, you have been affected. So LibreWolf fixed bin, Firefox patch bin, and Zen browser patched bin. Anyways, we'll get to that in a moment. But let's talk about the AUR. The AUR, known as the Arch User Repository, is a community-driven repository for Arch Linux users specifically. Now, others can actually access the AUR if you have Arch Linux builds or if you have Pacman installed. But this is an awesome, really crowdsourced, community-driven app store for Linux users. These apps are actually built from source, and you can read and edit every line of code that's installed, which is awesome. It gives you freedom and control. There's massive amounts of software availability here. Thousands and thousands of packages beyond just the official Arch repositories, and it covers niche, bleeding edge, and proprietary projects. So it makes it an amazing repository for users, but it has to be used with caution. Again, since anyone can upload, there's always a risk of malicious code or bad scripts, just like in this case that we're going to see in a moment. We're going to also talk about how to make sure that there is not malware in your packages for the future use. Anyway, the AUR has some general archives as well about news and things that they've talked about in previous years, which is why we can look at previous malware attempts from bad actors. But I want to get back to the one that just occurred. On the 16th of July, so as of making this about 4 days ago, at around 8 p.m., UTC+2, a malicious AUR package, was uploaded to the AUR. 2 other malicious packages were uploaded by the same user a few hours later. These packages were installing a script coming from the same GitHub repository that was identified as a remote access Trojan, or RAT for short. We already talked about the malicious packages that are affected: LibreWolf fixed bin, Firefox patch bin, and Zen browser patched bin. The Arch Linux team addressed the issues as soon as they became aware of the situation. As of today, 18th of July at around 6 p.m. UTC+2, the offending packages have been deleted from the AUR. We strongly encourage users that may have installed one of these packages to remove them from their system and take the necessary measures in order to ensure that they're not compromised. Now, it's easy to say just take some steps to make sure that you're not compromised. But the first thing you need to start out, if you think you downloaded one of these 3, or I would just go the extra step, if you had anything from the AUR, from LibreWolf, Firefox, or Zen, and you're not even sure if you downloaded these malicious packages, as they could be dependent on other things, well, just remove any packages that may have to do with these 3 that are from the AUR, which you can do with Pacman by doing sudo pacman-rns, and then the package name, for example, this package, or this. Next, check for residual files or backdoors. Any files outside of the user folder, look in your cron and systemd, startup and inits, just in case there's something that's actually running in the background at a periodic schedule. Usually you'll find things hidden in cron jobs or systemd config files. And finally, look at shell access. You can check out what ports are currently being used with things like netstat if you have it installed, or lsof, but you can do something like sudo netstat and then do -tulpn. And if you see any ports spit out, for example, connections on ports like 22, 23, 9000, random ones, 4433, whatever, start questioning why, because it's quite possible someone has infected the computer. Regardless, if you are uncertain and you're suspicious, just start with a clean slate. Get the files that you need off that computer. Hopefully you have a backup and you don't even have to touch those. And start with a clean slate, reinstall the whole entire operating. Of course, change any passwords that you may have tied to that computer as well. Oh, and before, when I said RNS with Pacman, R is going to remove the specified package and is actually the no save command, which removes any backup configuration files that would otherwise be preserved. We don't want any configuration files sitting around. And then S removes all dependencies that were installed as a part of that package, no longer needed by other packages. Mainly, we just want to remove any residual things that might have showed up when you installed the package. It is a big deal, as this does happen. And this isn't the first time this has happened. Malware can get into the AUR. It's because it's community driven and largely unmoderated at submission time. So you might be asking, how in the world did they catch this so quick? Because really, this only existed for about 2 days before it got caught. That's because of the wonderful users that use the AUR, not just simply thinking that things are safe. They actually spend time looking through these packages and submissions. For example here, users on Reddit quickly called out within 2 days that VirusTotal is not happy about this file. Edit. I'm also starting to think the original poster is trying to spread the malware. That's right. The original poster was saying, oh no, everything's good, and that there was some sort of a weird thing going on with false negative. But instead here, people continually called out that there was something wrong. A threat called Trojan Chaos, or also known as Chaos Rat. And sure enough, it did exist, as the AUR team swiftly removed the user and the packages. And that lines up with a 2-day-ago timeline. And wildly enough, this post was actually removed by the moderators of Arch Linux as well. This person was caught, and caught on many fronts. It's incredible that a bad actor like this would create a seemingly useful package, some sort of a fix for browser code, which they know would affect lots of browser codes. And one way to get those is through the AUR if you aren't compiling them manually by yourself from source. So now, how do we prevent malware from being downloaded? Well, it's hard, but there are a few things you can do. But first, go down and subscribe below. You wouldn't want to miss another video like this. YouTube can get finicky. Also, smash that like button on the way back up so more people know this recent malware attack with the AUR. Anyways, the security alert on these AUR packages that contain malware can still be checked. There are a few things you can start. And one is to review the package build. So if you're using Paru, for example, you do Paru, dash name, and finally dash review. This allows you to each build in any install file inside of the scripts. Flags are going to be things like curl, type get, typed over to sh, shell, obfuscated strings, so -64 commands like -t, move. All those types of commands can be considered red flags to use, but it's just something to take a deeper look at. Other things is you can just avoid the ones with risk factor, including low number of votes, comments, orphan packages that just got adopted all of a sudden. Those are things to really make sure that you're safe. Use containers or sandboxing methods, containers or non-root accounts to install packages. This just provides one more abstraction that the user has to get to in order to get to sensitive information or elevated privileges. And then, of course, you can always verify URLs and checksums. Make sure that they're only pointing to official and known domains like GitHub or SourceForge. Even in this, though, it was pointing to GitHub. It was just pulling a script from GitHub that would then do the malicious work. So that's hard. But do not skip checking checksums. This is in the package build and is your primary protection against supply chain attacks. This is where an attacker changes the upstream file. And again, you can look at that through the -- review and look for a SHA-256 sums line, which should tell you the SHAs. If you see skip inside of it, ask yourself, is the source a Git repo, dynamic archive that changes often? And also, is the packet binary coming from a secure HTTPS source? And then, is there any comment or rationale explaining why the SHAs do not show up? These are all ways to audit and check to make sure that you're not getting malware. Although it's a little hard to prevent it all, as we're going to see in 2018, we also had a similar incident that actually affected a lot of Linux users. This is from Hacker News back in the day, 2018. Arch Linux AUR repository found to be malware. And yes, packages in the AUR. But before we discuss this compromise, let's talk about leveling up your Linux experience today by downloading Mind Map and now new flashcards. Download them today at savvynuke.com.
what the tactic of 2 questions and a confirmation or validation, what the tactic does is it builds an artificial relationship. It manufactures trust between 2 people because it shows that one person's in control, but it also shows that the one person who's in control is actually interested enough that they're contributing, they're participating in the conversation,
right,
which makes the person answering questions feel like they're special, makes them feel like they're being listened to, it makes them feel heard, it makes them feel validated, right? And that is a natural human response to being in a community where you are valued and where you are an equal player. So this idea of ask a question, ask a relevant follow-up question, and then volunteer a congruent fact to validate the person is just a constant snowball that builds more and more momentum that makes the target feel comfortable.
We sometimes retain journalists and be like, how can I improve my interview technique? And I did that in years past, especially. And what's questions. So when you do an interview with like mock interviews, I'm just like, this is weird. You're doing this at all? And occasionally on YouTube, someone will be like, I'm going to want to get an interview thing. And they're like, never talk about yourself. Never add anything. They're like, just stick to the questions. And it's all kind of funny. How to make your show exactly like anybody else, replaceable and interesting 101.
Yeah,
like,
it's
never add anything.
Well, what's journalists don't realize that the podcast is not anything like journalism, right? That's right. It's completely different. It's a whole different media platform, which is why podcast journalism is going the way of the dodo. Not to mention the fact that when you interview somebody, it's because they want the attention of the subject, and they're trying to inform the public about the podcasting. What you're trying to do is you're trying to create a relationship between the audience.
Yes.
And the host is just the content guest, so that the guest always feels like they have a conversation with the guest. That's the difference between the two. And for me, it speaks to why podcasting is not going anywhere.
There's some nuance in here that I think, but you're largely correct. By the way, I want to stick up for good journalism. I think it's one of the most important things in the world. There's a reason it's called the fifth estate or whatever. I think it's super important. But you're right. The journalistic sort of interview, those things are 5, 10, 2 minutes, because that's as long as people want to hear something about, I don't know, their new music album or whatever. You have to have a conversation if you want to keep people interested. It's just how it goes.
And I will always stand up for good journalism. Unfortunately, good journalism is getting harder.
It is. I wanted to go back to one of your earlier points about creating. I love the idea that this is, you said, effective at sales. My previous company has sold probably tens of millions of dollars worth of services, essentially. But I had so much trouble hiring someone else to do the same thing. Part of it was because I was not good at all at training them on how to do this thing that we just discussed. I never read until recently is question, follow-up question, third question, and then or a confirmation, as you called it. So when this is a high-ticket item I was selling. It was a large seminar. $60 a decade and change ago, so that was real money. But I spent months just talking to people, and it would be like, hey man, how did that thing go that you were doing? Did you end up switching companies? Finally, she was driving you nuts. Okay, well, next year when you get your new job, all right, well, I'll talk to you in a few months. No ask. She's like moving things along, kind of one increments at a time. And then one day I would call and go, ready, man? Time to pull the trigger. And they go, here's $10,000. And then I remember people seeing those closing calls and going, how did you do that? Well, 18 months ago, I started this freight train moving. Because it looks like magic if you just look at the last phone call. It's like you just called that person and they gave you $8,000, $10,000. How did that happen? But it was like making friends, having them tell me big problems they're having in life, and then being like, here's a solution that I will sell you for a reasonable cost relative to the scale of your problem.
Right. Yeah. Correct. I mean, what sales should be that so few salespeople understand is sales is just a relationship. It's a relationship where you're trying the right balance of what we call rapport. Rapport is the back and forth exchange of not sales related that build momentum for what feels like trust, right? And then once you have the rapport in place, leverage action that you want. Now, manipulative leverage is gross and feels sticky.
Yeah.
Emotional leverage, we all love it when our close friend is like, dude, you need to get into the gym. We should start tomorrow. In fact, I bought you the first month in my gym.
Yeah.
Let's go work out in the morning together. We're like, hell yeah, let's go. That's motivational leverage.
Works better than, hey, you're so fat, no one's ever going to love you, right? That's not one of those is going to be more effective.
Yeah, or I bought you your first month and you owe me, right? Like it's not the same thing. So with what ends up happening is salespeople think that it's like this process of calls and getting enough information and like understanding the product details, like the features and benefits. They don't realize features and benefits don't equal purpose. Right? The features and the benefits are there to complement the purpose of the sale altogether. Right? I need a car. I don't really care if the car has all-weather tires and leather interior. Right? I don't care that it comes with a warranty. What I care about is the purpose of the car, which is transportation that keeps my family safe and is healthy for the environment and can go a long distance on a small thing of gas. Right? Whatever.
Station was so huge. This type of thing was so huge for me early in those careers. I remember closing people and getting products and go, wait, what did I just buy? I don't even. Yeah, you're gonna get this and this, and they're like, yeah, but what else? And I'm like, and you list the thing, and you just gave all this money, and you didn't even really know what it was. And I remember being kind of confused, and then I asked some of my sales mentors, and they're like, no. You threw them over the solution of their problem. Details were just not even at the front of their mind. They had you to get the brochure that they, and you just start to realize, like, wow, this is kind of a superpower.
We call it in the espionage world, we call it selling yourself. Like they sell themselves. And when you have a really good, well-developed, appropriate intelligence source, and you go to actually pitch them on this idea of espionage, they sell themselves. And you're like, hey, I think we have an opportunity here for your secrets to make a difference in your financial life and in the future of your country. And they're like, yeah, I thought I might have that opportunity. And I think and as long as I work with you, I trust you, and I think I'm ready to do this thing. And then you're like, I didn't even make a pitch. I just said, I think you have an opportunity. And they're like, yeah, I'm ready to do this thing.
Does the CIA ever use like celebrities to get something out of folks? Because it seems like someone with massive status would, in some cases, do really well.
The problem is people with massive status are unpredictable.
Well, that's
How do you get them to keep a secret? How do you know who's watching them and who's not watching them? How long before they brag about whatever else? The problem with celebrities is celebrities, to gain celebrity, and you know this yourself, are a celebrity. There's a certain element where you have to value yourself. Whereas the best intelligence officers, they are sacrificial. They're like, you don't think that at all. You don't think that for the United States.
You're like, right now?
Yeah. No. So that's why, like, when you want to train somebody to be a secret operative, a clandestine operative, you want them brainwashed, to use your term, in a way where they believe the best thing they can do is sacrifice.
Yeah, no, if they'd actually caught me at age 25, totally different story.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I have honestly, being married plus kids, there was a chance. Not that they were trying by any means.
But once you're married with kids, once you see what it's like to have people who unconditionally love you, there's no way to, like, the service to your country never compares to service to the people you love.
Yeah, I think it's quite fascinating. I've heard you say anxiety is a superpower. It obviously keeps you alive. Are there a lot of Jews in the CIA?
CIA believes that all people are born with a spy secret superpower. For some people, that means they can win deals. For others, they can spot liars. Some can even seduce lovers. Tests to help.
Hello.
Every goal setting system you've ever learned is broken. I'm a leading expert in behavior, and I'm going to show you how to reprogram your mind to finally get what you want. So let's be honest. Most people suck at setting goals, and it's not your fault. The entire system that you've been taught about goal setting, it's broken. And it's broken because it doesn't use the part of your brain that literally makes all of the decisions and runs your entire life. The limbic system and our brain system. This is the neurocognitive intelligence, or NCI, goal setting system. Let me show you one most powerful thing that you're going to ever do to reach your goals. Step 1, describe the ideal and perfect outcome with vivid details and measurable elements that allow you to know when you have arrived. So this is like plotting a desired arrival point on a GPS. It's the address. It is the latitude and longitude of your destination. Then we move over to the right here. Write out your least desired outcome if nothing changes. If you just keep doing exactly what you've been doing, we're going to describe in very vivid detail where you're going to arrive if your current habits, behaviors, minds, and worldview. So imagine 25. If you don't change a thing. Harsh? Yes. Necessary? Absolutely. So write it out. Your brain needs calm versus the nightmare. And this is your mind starts to crave the idea, because staying the same becomes unbearable. Next, we're going to write down milestones, habits, and new beliefs that are accomplishing a byproduct of all of the goal accomplishment should always be, what can I do to make my goals a natural how I'm choosing to live my life? How can I make my goals a byproduct? So don't focus on the goal here. Focus on the habits, and that makes a natural byproduct of are going to become. So goals are destinations, habits and behaviors are the vehicle to the goal. Next, we're going to write out a detailed and very maybe painful list of all the habits, beliefs, and behaviors that you might currently be doing tiddling. One, write down all of those beliefs, those behaviors or habits that could just drag you toward the nightmare that you wrote down earlier. Make it painful. You need to feel the cost of your inaction. Next, we have mammalian brain. So how will you use the fate model to wash yourself into getting habits, beliefs, worldviews, and mindset? It is a system I developed to understand and use that make the mammalian brain start taking action on stuff. It's the most powerful tool to understand how to shape human behavior, and there's the most detailed tutorial in the world inside of the